front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could spruce up your spring, as we have an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash to be won. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also give you the latest Mulberry handbag, and not one, but two sought-after designer watches. Make sure you don't miss out, as lines close on the 4th of April. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
It's Patrick Christys tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christys tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good evening, this is Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howie. On the show tonight, is Labour about to ban pub banter via the back door? A Canadian nurse fired for pointing out that gender exists, and a couple arrested and detained in an Orwellian display for criticising their kids' school in a private WhatsApp group. Join me to discuss their ordeal. And we've got some comedians answering some crazy culture developments from a live studio audience. But first, the news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Josh, thank you. The top stories. Prince Harry has been accused of harassment and bullying by the chair of the charity he set up in Princess Diana's honour. Dr. Sophie Chandauka has claimed the Duke of trying to sabotage the organisation before quitting. Earlier this week, she told reporters he wanted to eject her of the charity he founded in honour of his late mother. In response, we've heard from a source close to Prince Harry and other trustees who left the charity sent to Bale in solidarity this week. They said they fully expected this publicity stunt from the doctor, and they say they remain firm in their resignation and to look forward to the adjudication of the truth. The Home Secretary says plans for new checks on unauthorised working will help cut levels of illegal migration. Her comments come as the government will introduce tough new laws to clamp down on illegal working. Companies hiring people in the gig economy will now be legally required to carry out checks confirming that anyone working in their name is eligible to work in the UK, bringing them in line with other employers. The term gig economy usually refers to short-term jobs, the most common examples being delivery drivers and construction workers. That's all ahead of the government's first international summit on people smuggling gangs, which begins tomorrow in London. In other news, rescue teams from around the world are in Myanmar after a powerful 7.7 magnitude earthquake struck on Friday, killing 1,700 people, experts saying that death toll could rise to 10,000. The UK government has pledged up to £10 million in life-saving aid. The UN's warning a severe shortage of medical supplies at the moment is hampering the response to the quake as the search for survivors continues. Over 300 people are reportedly still missing. In neighbouring Thailand, the death toll in Bangkok has reached 18, with 78 still missing, hundreds believed to still be trapped under that rubble of some of those collapsed buildings. And finally, the Princess of Wales says nature has been her family's sanctuary over the past year in a special message for Mother's Day. A video posted alongside her message mainly features footage of different natural environments across the UK, as well as some shots of her hand touching a tree and Prince William walking dogs in Norfolk last summer. Writing on X and Instagram today, Princess Catherine shared her wish to celebrate Mother Nature and the importance of our bond with the natural world. And those are the latest headlines for now. More in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
We're going, yeah. There they are. The hardcore fans. Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howie. This is a show where we cast our gaze across the spectrum of culture, current affairs and politics and do our very best to make some sense of the senseless. Coming up on the show tonight, is Labour's new employment bill about to ban pub banter via the back door? A Canadian nurse fired after a 4-year ordeal for daring to point out that sex is real. And a couple arrested and detained in an Orwellian display for criticising their kids' school in a private WhatsApp group. Join me to discuss their ordeal. And, of course, myself and my fantastic panel will be answering questions from our wonderful studio audience. My comedian guests this evening are Kerry Marks and Adi McQueen. Here they are. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Adi, I like your cross there.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm doing my best to advertise Christianity.
OK.
So you've got the cross, but you have to have the low-cut top as well. So, you know, you cater for everybody, Christ and the devil.
Yes, no, I've just given up Judaism. Thank you.
It worked.
It would have been so much easier if you'd just done that in the Spanish Inquisition. I think that you would have been much more successful. How about you, Kerry? Still Jewish?
I'm angry today, Josh, because, you know, you took away an hour of my time again. And
every year?
Every year they take away one of my hours, and I don't like it. And I think, you know, I was really on the farmer's side with the inheritance tax and everything, and now I think to hell with them. Yeah. You know, if they can't put their own clocks backward, forward, whatever they need to do, leave us alone.
You need the full sort of 14 hours, don't you?
Exactly. You know.
You've only had 13 hours sleep today. It's terrible. Anyway, we're going to have some questions from our audience. Our first question is from Chris.
Hi, Josh.
Hey, Chris.
What does Labour have against Christianity?
Yeah, what does Labour have against Christianity? This is Rushmore Borough Council in Surrey. They sought an injunction to ban Christians from preaching, praying and handing out leaflets in the town centres of Farnborough and Aldershot, claiming preachers were being offensive and caused alarm and distress to passers-by. This seems excessive, he says on a show called Free Speech Nation.
Yeah, as far as free speech goes, I mean, you never know quite what you're going to get with the preachers, do you? Sometimes they're fun. You know, I really miss the guy who used to stand there with a sign saying the end of the world is nigh. Whatever happened to him? He was fun, wasn't it? I always thought he was trying to get laid, you know. He's going, the world's going to end, I'm your last chance. But then, yeah, and sometimes the Christian preachers are fun because, you know, I'll walk past and they'll say, you're a sinner, and I'll think, how does he know? And then I hear he's telling everyone else they're a sinner, and I think, great, we're all equal, it's nice. You know, so I think it's a shame to lose. We don't want to lose that, really. It's part of the British way, isn't it?
Well, that's it. I mean, it's an old tradition.
It's an old tradition. I suppose it's a bit like Speaker's Corner. Now, I mean, I am Catholic, but I come from more of the school of attraction rather than promotion. Like, I don't think it's an effective means of conversion. But at the same time, if you're allowed to have a billboard of a woman in a bikini advertising, I don't know, fig rolls. Why shouldn't you allow to have Christianity being advertised in the same way as well? So I think it's better that they are there and they're allowed. Now, if they're getting in your face and aggressive, not so good, but that's not free speech, that's harassment.
Well, the council is saying, yes, it's because there's been lots of complaints. It also seems to be what they didn't have back in the olden days is sound systems. So I think that is part of the problem. So you've also got shopkeepers now who are complaining they've got these loud microphones, they're pumping out this sin stuff all day.
That would be really annoying, actually. You know,
I'm not saying that's a reason to ban it, but that seems to be maybe what's that escalation.
Yeah, you're going into Ann Summers, you're just trying to get a peaceful dildo for yourself, and it's, you are a sinner, is constantly going. It's not good marketing. It's not good marketing. But it was an interesting article. It's a very interesting question. I mean, the preacher maintains that being seen as hostile is unavoidable when attempting to convert non-believers into the true light of Christ. So they seem like extreme people that they've spoken to here in this article. And then the guy who was interviewed, who they don't name, went on to say, as a Christian, I am compelled to share the gospel, and if the gospel is not my idea, it is the idea of God, which sounds like something that he would say just before he drives a bus over a cliff, you know? So they're finding, I don't know where they found this guy or this person anyway, but it's
street, or probably on the street.
On the street.
As a Jew, you know, we don't proselytise against our thing. And also we have no history of forced conversions, which is how we've managed to stay annihilatable. You know, it's how we've managed to stay a tiny number that people constantly want to get rid of. So I think it does work for.
Well, this bill, it didn't pass, and I've seen obviously I've seen Christian street preachers, but I've also seen Muslim street preachers.
Yeah, of course there are.
So this doesn't seem to mention that.
Where's the atheists with their hey, sin, nothing's going to happen, have fun, and we should have some more scientists for balance as well. With you're all stardust. It's fun.
Fair enough, right. A Rushmore Council spokesman said an injunction is being sought because the council received a huge number of complaints relating to aggressive behaviour and the use of loud amplification for preaching, which has caused nuisance and distress. The legal action is not intended to stop peaceful groups from preaching or preventing freedom of speech. Our next question is from John. Hey, John.
Hi, Josh. Should trans children's charities encourage children not to self-harm?
You think so? Yes. So should trans children's charities encourage children to not self-harm? So this is a whistleblower. They've claimed a controversial charity, LGBT Youth Scotland, trained volunteers to ask children if they were using clean razor blades instead of telling them not to self-harm. They claim they were told that if a child was hurting themselves as a coping mechanism, it is wrong to take that away from them. John, that seems like bad advice.
So what were they doing with the razor blades? Slicing the genitals off?
What? John, you always take it too far. What? We shouldn't. The self-harming is what some kids with mental health issues do. Is the point? I'm just not even going to go to you, John.
I love John.
Every single time he takes it to such a dark place. And because of that, I'm not going to visit you in your flat now.
So I heard this story first, and I listened to it on the way down here, and I was listening to it on Safari Reader, and so I thought the story was about children selling farms, but it's not. So, back to the subject. Well, should an ideology that encourages people to chop their genitals off go so far as encouraging them to self-harm? I say that's one step too far. Would you not?
Very controversial.
There is an argument. It's like with heavy drug users, giving them clean needles and so on. But I think the better advice for children is not to self-harm. It's a bit like saying, oh, you're feeling suicidal, here's the right way to tie a noose. You know, you're going to listen to James O'Brien's radio show, here's the right way to tie a noose. That would actually make sense.
Yeah, it's the same thing twice. So the issue here is that it seems like they can't accept, or this charity won't accept that actually there should be limitations on children. Yeah. In that it's like they seem to think that, oh, well, if a little boy thinks they're a little girl, you should just follow through with that. If a little boy wants or a little girl wants to harm themselves, then we must sort of manage that somehow, rather than just saying there's a mental health issue here that needs to be resolved.
Well, as Cary hit upon, this is universal, I think, in the government-sponsored mental health world, whereas you have, controlled drinking for alcoholics, you have the clean needles. So I'm not surprised. This wouldn't just be, I would imagine, for trans charity. This would be, I'd say, any children's mental health charity. And it's sad, but it is an accepted practice. And
it's an accepted practice to recommend clean.
It's an accepted practice to damage limitation. Like if you're going to, you know, this is a normal thing that they have. And I mean, it's controversial. I don't know. I mean, I don't work in the sector, but you know, like for me, the only experience I have is like I'm an alcoholic. I talk about it all the time. I'm addicted to talking about it. But when I was under the borough of Harrow and their alcohol services, in Ireland, they tend to be more religious in their focus, and they go total abstinence and a belief in a higher power, spiritual.
That was God, by the way.
Yeah.
He was saying. He was just saying.
Right track.
It's okay. You're allowed to drink.
Yeah. Oh no. But in England, where it's more secular, they would talk about, you know, buy your alcohol in bulk so that you don't have to go out the second time to the shop because we know you're going to drink, so we've accepted it. And I found that very, very grim.
Yes, well, I find, but particularly, but when we're talking about children here.
Yeah, it is grim.
Doubly so. Right, a charity spokesman said self-harm is a difficult topic and we follow guidance from specialists such as Self-Harm Network. For Scotland, LGBT Youth Scotland is not a crisis organisation. We work hard to keep young people safe when in a crisis and support referrals to specialist organisations who can better support them. Our next question is from Melvin.
John, please. Yeah. Good evening, all. Why does it seem that UK publishers are so racist?
Why are UK publishers so racist? So this is ahead of the Black British Book Festival this weekend. A number of black literary figures say there's been a noticeable downward shift in the number of black writers being published. Founder Selena Brown said the number of black authors being pitched to her has dropped dramatically in the last 18 months, and the UK publishing is now less accessible to black authors than it was 5 years ago. Are you familiar with this? Obviously, in the wave of Black Lives Matter, it seemed like there were many books that came out from many different ethnicities, particularly black authors. It seems now that maybe declined.
Well, you would have expected it to go down after Black Lives Matter. There's a big spike with Black Lives Matter, but it's down to the low again. You would have thought it would carry through a little bit, and it's very poor. The same could be said for the football. How many black directors are there? You know, and there's loads. I mean, our country, our best footballers, loads of, you know, what percentage of black footballers and what percentage of managers?
Yeah,
so
that's a good
it's
point.
not just publishers, but I'll have a go at publishers as well.
OK, fair enough. It's an interesting phenomenon. There were lots of books published, I think, and there were some successes within that time. But unfortunately, there seems like there was also a lot of money spent that wasn't recouped by these publishing houses off the back of it, and it seems like we're dealing with market forces here.
Yeah, it's market forces. Sometimes something gets a bit of traction behind it and it goes really popular. This happens with Irish stuff as well. Now, I'm not comparing Irish and black, but, you know, there's a very fashion, we get loads of traction, and then we dilute the market with our paddy stuff and it goes down. So I'm hoping that this is just a dip and that black writers and black publishers continue to make progress and strengthen their sales. I mean, the article said that 3% of people working in publishing were black. Now, that's not terrible considering 4% of the population are black. So it's not ideal, but it's not terrible. And then 17% of people working in publishing are ethnic minorities, but it's 90% of the population in total. So again, it's not terrible. I think it's very achievable that they will achieve equality there. So I'm not totally discouraged by this.
Well, did you look those figures up, or did you count everybody?
She wrote them down in a little
What can I say?
I saw you the other day. It's going 2, 3, 4, 5. I was in a supermarket a few months ago.
Humble brag.
And I know it happens. And there was a woman. She knocked a loaf of bread. It was a loaf of rye bread off a shelf, and it fell on the floor. And she ignored it. And I picked it up, and it was a loaf of rye bread. So I said, "Black loaves matter." And it got nothing. Nothing. And that's still hurting me. I thought that was quite amusing.
That's your contribution.
It was rye. Yes, what do you need? You want intelligent
Well, if
opinions?
you're going to...
no, OK, look, I don't know enough about this, but yes, of course, there was a rise in interest in black writers during Black Lives Matter, and Black Lives Matter, I think, was a great deal of worthiness to it, apart from where it started becoming anti-Semitic and the leaders of the movement bought themselves some fancy houses in LA. But otherwise, it's a good movement they had. But maybe what's needed now is another incident to get more black writers in. You know, another police shooting or something. Maybe that's the way to go about it. What do you think?
That's quite an extreme...
Too much?
Yeah, too much.
Possibly.
I'm trying to help. I'm trying to help come up with answers rather than just complain all the time.
Just beating John.
Right, our final question for the moment is from Anton.
Will fathers make women's sports safe again?
Will fathers make women's sports safe again? Yes, this is the father who's reportedly been slapped with an 18-week touchline ban after he allegedly shouted, "You're an effing boy," at a girl in an under-12s rugby match after hearing rumours she was transgender. The girl left the match in tears, and her father fronted up to Hall, who restated that he believed that the girl was a boy before the pair started to clash and had to be separated. So I would say, first of all, not to shout any abuse at children.
Children,
possibly.
yeah. These are our under 12-year-olds, and whether trans or not, the strength difference would have been nothing at that. It's negligible anyway. So it would have been irrelevant. And also, we don't know whether the child was actually a trans girl or actually a girl.
Well, they're saying not, but there was a rumour.
They're saying not, but then she cried, so it must be a girl. And excuse my judgmentalism. And if first of all, of course, he's wrong. He's shouting at a child, and he's being abusive as well, and effing at her and so on.
He's saying, by the way, that he didn't swear in the tribunal.
Well, OK.
But I'm just.
But even then, he's run onto the pitch and shouted at a girl who knocked his daughter over, and it was a bit too much. But at the same time, it's double the offence, though, isn't it? Because he's also saying, if she's a girl, that she's a girl who looks like a boy who looks like a girl. Which is, it's a bit like that one where you congratulate a woman for being pregnant and find out she's actually fat. You know, I did that once and I felt so bad. Now I'm never going to do it. If I see a woman who might be pregnant, I just say, "You're fat," straight away. Avoid any confusion.
Would it make any difference if this had been a trans girl, i.e. it was a biological male? Do you think then there would be a case for... If I just know that if my daughter was in an incident like this, being harmed by a biological male, I wouldn't necessarily run and abuse the child, but I might certainly go and speak quite aggressively to the parents in terms of allowing it, certainly if my child had been hurt. I just wonder if that would have made it somehow more palatable.
I'm not sure. I mean, I taught for years, and when they are that age, it's not until 13 that the boys start to grow and get a lot bigger. So they would have been...
You should have been in my boarding school.
They're on
You definitely should
not you specifically, but one should have been in my boarding school.
It seems like it's such an overreaction. Parents are... I say I'm not a parent, and neither is Cary, that he knows of. So we don't...
I was going to say that.
I knew you would, so I stopped you. So I don't know this emotional thing that they get during sports, but it just seems like such a ridiculous thing. It's so horrible for the girl. I mean, he should never, ever in the rest of his life get a World's Greatest Dad mug. He's in the bottom 1% at least.
Right, next on Free Speech Nation, Labour accused of banning banter in pubs. We're joined by free speech campaigner Toby Young. See you in a sec.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christys tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and he did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christys tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You have the power then
Yeah, as I
And
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. No, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Angela Rayner's Employment Rights Bill has been labelled a crackdown on banter and a threat to free speech. The Equality and Human Rights Commission said new rules that require companies, like owners of pubs, to take all reasonable steps to prevent their employees from being harassed by third parties could lead to excessive limitations on debate. Among the critics is the Free Speech Union's founder, Toby Young, now a Lord, who uses maiden speech in the upper chamber to criticise it, saying the added pressure plus legal fees may be the final nails in the coffin for some pubs. Let's take a look.
And I wonder how many publicans will decide, in the face of all their other difficulties, that this new duty, the cost of complying with it and the additional risks it entails, will mean the game is no longer worth the candle. According to the Campaign for Real Ale, pubs are closing at the rate of 37 a week. And I hope your lordships will think.
I'm joined now by the recently ennobled director of the Free Speech Union, Toby Young. You're there on telly and now you're here.
Yes, it was slightly nerve-wracking making my maiden speech. Of course, I've done a fair amount of public speaking, but never in Parliament before. It's recorded by Hansard, so if you make a mistake, that's then written down and recorded for posterity. So it is a little bit nerve-wracking, but having got it out the way, I hope next time I'll be
did great. And now
more
you're part
relaxed.
of the establishment.
Now I'm officially out part of the establishment. Yeah, can't deny that.
So this was a sort of fortuitous week for you to make your maiden speech in that way, because of the EHRC coming forward in this manner and steps to point out what a threat this could be to free speech.
Yeah, I thought the briefing by the Equality and Human Rights Commission about the impact, it was about the bill in general, but quite a lot of it was about the impact of Clause 20, the banter clause. And it was really quite critical. And it pointed out that trying to navigate the conflict between people's right to express their lawfully protected belief, the rights of gender-critical feminists to stand up for sex-based women's rights, will conflict with the right of employees not to be harassed, trans employees who may find that kind of opinion harassing. So that's a really complicated and difficult juggling act. The Employment Tribunal hasn't yet resolved that. It's an evolving area of law. So to expect publicans to get their heads around it and make sure that they protect the freedom of expression rights, the Article 10 rights of customers to express their protected beliefs, as well as the rights of their employees not to be upset or offended by overheard conversations in virtue of their protected characteristics. That's going to be extraordinarily difficult. And the word I think the EHRC used was challenging. But for challenging, read expensive, which is why I said in my speech it could be the final nail in the coffin for thousands of pubs which are already struggling with things like the rise in national insurance contributions. In addition to Clause 20, this new employment rights bill makes it harder to employ people on flexible terms. It eliminates 0 hours contracts. So all of these things are creating a kind of perfect storm for the pub trade, and I wouldn't be surprised if this new clause accelerates the erasure of what is, you know, an essential part of our history and heritage, the great old British pub.
So why do you think the government is so married to this particular clause? I mean, they must have heard the arguments by now against it.
Yes.
To still go through with it seems like self-harm, as well as harming places like pubs and free speech.
Extending employer liability for the harassment of their employees by third parties. At the moment, they're only liable for the harassment of their employees by other employees, which is why you have all these kind of diversity courses and codes of conduct and policies in workplaces up and down the country. But extending it in this way to include members of the public, customers, that was originally part of the Equality Act, but it was repealed in 2013 when it was heavily criticised by employers, who said, how can we possibly be expected to police the conversations of members of the public? It's one thing to ask us to, you know, police the conversations of our employees, to send them on training courses, to limit our liability by saying they have to comply with these workplace policies. But how can they do it when it comes to members of the public? So it was repealed in 2013. But this government is bringing it back. There was an attempt in a private member's bill to bring it back a couple of years ago, a bill called the Worker Protection Bill. But there was a rebellion in the House of Lords, and this clause, third-party harassment, was stripped out. But now it's come back again. It looks like there's a determined cabal, I think, of woke activists in Whitehall who are just determined to get this through. I'm not even sure Angela Rayner is aware that it's in the bill. The government's efforts to defend it have been incredibly feeble. I don't think they realise just quite how devastating an impact this will have on the hospitality sector and other sectors. I mean, imagine if you're a sports fan, you're in a stadium, will you be able to say to a linesman who makes, in your view, a bad call, "Are you blind?" That might offend a partially sighted steward. A member of the club could take offence on the partially sighted steward's behalf and demand that you be banned from the stadium for that kind of outburst. So it doesn't just affect hospitality, it affects sports, it also affects higher education. I mean, one thing we've encountered at the Free Speech Union again and again is the kind of gold plating of the Equality Act. So activists say, you as an employer have a duty to protect your trans employees from being harassed by inviting visiting speakers like Helen Joyce and Kathleen Stock and Maya Forstater onto campus, because just their presence on campus will constitute harassment of your employees, and you have a duty to protect your employees from being harassed in this way. And we've often had to point out, no, your duty does not extend to protecting your employees from being harassed by third parties. Visiting speakers are third parties. You've misunderstood the Equality Act, possibly with the help of Stonewall. But now that wishful thinking about the Equality Act that woke activists have been trying to claim on its behalf for years will be true if this clause goes through.
Well, that ties us well into the next story, which is Sussex University of Sussex's fine, £585,000, I think. And they're contesting it because of what happened when Kathleen Stock worked for them and how they didn't take any steps to protect her right to be a teacher without harassment, and it seems like they're coming out fighting. The Vice-Chancellor's sort of said, no, we're going to go up against this, even though it's been argued that actually they got a much lesser fine because it was the first time that they've actually been fined.
Yes, I think the Vice-Chancellor of Sussex University is claiming that this fine is absurdly excessive. But in fact, I think it was cut in half when Sussex were initially told how much they were going to be fined. They submitted various appeals, and in the end, the fine was reduced by 50%. But I think this is a really important blow that's been struck for academic freedom and free speech on campus. I mean, it essentially sends a message to campuses that have got these absurdly censorious trans inclusion policies, which is what we're talking about here. So Kathleen Stock's right to pursue her research, to express her legally protected views about the importance of defending sex-based women's rights, they were curtailed by Sussex, and Sussex didn't do anything to protect her from being repeatedly harassed in the most unpleasant, threatening, horrible way by numerous numerous activists, including activists on staff. And it isn't just Sussex that has this policy. It turns out this trans inclusion policy, which effectively limits what gender-critical feminists are allowed to say on campus, members of staff, employees of the university, it was copied from a template devised by an organisation called Advanced HE, where HE stands for higher education, and many other universities have copied this template too. Leeds, for instance. So it'll be interesting to see whether these other universities, who have exactly the same policies, which they've now learnt from the Office for Students, are probably unlawful, and they too could be facing fines if they don't do something about it. So it'll be interesting to see whether they dump these policies. I hope they do, because they really are having a chilling effect for people like Kathleen Stock in other universities up and down the country.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see what other fines might be coming. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you. So we should say here that the EHRC has said they could lead to excessive limitations on debate. We will find out if it will or won't. Coming up in a second, we have the couple arrested and detained for criticising their kids' school in a private WhatsApp group. That's coming up actually later in the show. But next, is the National Trust being replaced by an anti-woke alternative? Find out in a couple of minutes. See you then. Thanks, mate. Cheers, mate.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there. We continue to stay unsettled across central and eastern parts of the Mediterranean, with further heavy showers and thunderstorms, some localised flooding possible. Through Monday, we can see across much of Greece into Italy those heavy downpours continuing, some brisk winds, feeling quite cold too, but drier further west into Spain and Portugal, sunny spells before heading over to Madeira, where there'll be some showers here, and largely dry across the Canary Islands. Over the next few days, it stays fairly similar, temperatures in the sunshine reaching the low 20s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
Oxford is set to make an ancient Latin ceremony non-binary. Well, as the old saying goes, carpe they them.
Nice. It's Oxford set to make 800-year-old Latin ceremony non-binary, and it's given out degrees in Latin since the 12th century, though it's still kind of using Latin, but it's changing it so it's gender neutral. So magistri, meaning masters, will become Vos, apparently. I don't know. I didn't get Latin because I went to a state school. I don't know what any of this means. So I sound like Lewis Schaefer. I don't know what this means. So it's shocking. It's kind of pure. It's a good example of woke replacing tradition and standards. It's kind of textbook example. And I'm amazed that we're still doing this stuff. We haven't got the memo. It's like we haven't noticed that in America this is all over. You know, France never followed this rubbish. It's like we're waiting for the telegram to arrive that woke is over. One YouTuber called it woke North Korea. We're still stuck doing this rubbish. And by the way, when you destroy our great universities by doing rubbish like this, one reason is it's because the students pay money, so it's also student-led, but also the professors agree half the time anyway. And when you destroy great universities, who knows if you can rebuild them? So it's a tragedy, really.
I'm with you. I'm with Nick Dixon.
Thank you.
They don't realise that woke is over.
I wonder if this would not catch on in France because it would just be such a pain in the butt in terms of they've got a lot more male-female to try and make everything non-binary. The second thing I would say is that of course it's over, and everybody knows it's over, apart from these captured institutions. So I would say that it is recognised to be over in this country, and certainly most of our politicians now, certainly the clever ones like Red Streeting. But it's still insane that within certain places, particularly academia, as we're seeing here, they're still buying into this ideology, and non-binary is maybe the pinnacle of it, because it really doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. This week we see two cultural institutions rejecting wokeness and being rewarded for it. Joining me now is the most cultured fellow I know. It's David Oldroyd-Bolt. David, welcome. The first example of that is Wigmore Hall. I believe they've now rejected 340,000 or something from the Arts Council.
Yeah, so Wigmore Hall, along with many other cultural institutions in this country, has received grants from Arts Council England for many years. The director of Wigmore Hall, John Gilhooly, decided last year that actually the criteria for receiving these grants, that is to say that they had to sign up to ACE's Let's Create scheme, which was founded in or instigated in 2020 and is much more about DEI than it is about supporting arts, were criteria that he did not want to subscribe to. Because, in his words, what they do at Wigmore Hall is akin to the Olympics when it comes to the arts, and these kind of things are much more appropriate for community associations. So, over the past year, he has built up a £10 million directors' fund, meaning that the money is no longer necessary and that they can concentrate on their core, which is providing the very, very best in particularly chamber music and solo piano and solo violin and voice.
So you're telling me there's an artistic institution that's just focusing on making good art? That sounds like it'll never catch on.
Really old-fashioned, isn't it? Because one of the things that was extraordinary about this Let's Create scheme is that it sought to challenge, quote, the prevailing classical music focus of opera, music theatre and classical music venues, which might be akin to criticising Chelsea for focusing on, say, football or Wimbledon for focusing on, say, tennis. You might think that these are the things that it's supposed to do, but no, for the Arts Council in England it was much more important that they had these spurious notions of accessibility and of diversity and inclusion. And John Gilhooly decided this was... He's run the place for 20 years, he knows what he's doing, it's the finest concert hall in Britain, said this was no longer a necessary thing for them, they would rather do what they do for their very, very loyal audience and do it better and do it without having to have recourse to the state.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder how much it will catch on. I mean, I imagine there are some artistic institutions now who are very much more and more dependent on that money from the Arts Council. As they've gone down that route, that's where maybe the bulk of their... We're talking here, I think it was 3% of their income from Wigmore Hall. But by focusing less on creating great art, they're going to obviously, I imagine, have less ticket sales, need more grant money, and then it sort of becomes a race to the bottom.
Well, you would imagine so. And one of the instances of this, which is very sad, is the Royal Festival Hall. In fact, the whole South Bank Centre in London has now decided it will simply not open on Mondays. And they have gone deep into the woke rabbit hole over recent years. Their programming, and particularly what they're trying to do with new music, has had not anything to do, as far as I can see, with artistic excellence on the new music front, and everything to do with these, as I said earlier, spurious ideas of accessibility.
So you've got to write, like, quarterly reports.
You have to write 60-page quarterly reports.
The artistic output that you have is backing the DEI project.
And if you think that most of these places are running on shoestring budgets as it is, people in arts are not well paid, whether on the administrative side. And so if you've got someone who every quarter has to write a 60-page report, that is time that he or she is not spending on finding exciting new performers, on finding good new composers, or in the realms of dance, good new choreographers. And they're spending it on these idiotic schemes. And I think this is where there is going to come a crunch point before too long between what the public actually wants, which, as we see from Wigmore Hall and from the new Beckstein Hall and from the Barbican, it must be said, does this rather well, to provide core repertoire done to the very highest standard alongside new repertoire of extremely great artistic importance. those things are winning, and where there are the adherences to the DEI mindset, where there is this reliance on the state funding, which comes with all these caveats, they're not succeeding. And I would say that within the next 5 years, it's going to be an interesting time in the arts for which have the courage to follow the example of Wigmore Hall and which stick to the ever more controlling tentacles of Arts Council England.
Well, this is it. So it's not just classical music or opera. We're also seeing this development. We're seeing things like Disney.
Yes.
They've lost millions, if not billions, on trying to implement these policies.
Yes, and the new Snow White film, which is bombed.
Yeah, we also saw it in historic houses, which has sort of been set up. I think they've had 10,000 new members join in the last year. And I imagine part of that is because they're a little bit cheaper than the alternatives, but also because they're just, again, focusing on the core project of allowing access to these spaces, rather than, someone who once had something to do with slavery visited here.
The Historic Houses England is a body that individually owned houses join up to. It's not like the National Trust where it's run by the body. It's more of a sort of, you might say, a trade association. And so each house, you pay your money and then you pay to go in, but this is so that you can get some kind of discount on access. And each house is run by and often lived in the people either who built it or who've had it for centuries, and it's up to them. Some of them, for instance, Harwood in Leeds, in West Yorkshire, do have some kind of focus on how the money was created or earned that paid for it. Others, like Houghton and Hever, where Anne Boleyn grew up, are simply about the history of these places and why they remain important in their counties and to our general national story. And the director said in an interview with The Telegraph today, it is not for Historic Houses England, it is not for him to tell these people what they should or should not be doing with their houses. It's for them to provide a scheme that allows people to know where they can go and receive a good experience of what you might call heritage culture. And I think this is a good example to the National Trust, though it will probably choose not to follow the example, of how you can run a heritage body that gives people an intelligent view of history. It gives people a choice about how they access these things, and that treats people with the courtesy to think that they're probably going to know a little bit about these places anyway if they're choosing to visit them and spend not inconsiderable amounts of money doing so, and therefore they will be perfectly well aware that this country had in its past some slave trading, that this country had in its past connections with the sugar trade, that this country has in the past not always acted as the greatest moral arbiter, and yet that we have done things, particularly since the beginning of the 19th century, to address and to ameliorate that. Now, I would like to see, we've discussed this before with bodies like Restore Trust, trying to bring the National Trust back to its founding principles of providing a safe haven, as it were, for country houses that would otherwise, because of depredations of taxation or the sheer economic unviability of running these things, providing them with that haven and allowing the public access to them. What I particularly like about Historic Houses England is that these places are, as I said, run by and lived in the people who built them.
So you can see someone on the toilet?
Well, I should hope you would at some point, but not here. And the point is that the National Trust has in its founding principles the idea that these places should be kept and should be used in their original way. And it's just not doing that. The number of National Trust houses that are practically empty or where they use some of it for offices and then you have a little bit that's on show is scandalous. These places are essentially going fallow and being allowed to rot away. Whereas if you have places like Holcombe Hall, where they're very much run as functioning estates, or if you have places like Harwood, where they are used not only as historic houses, but have local arts festivals and shows, I think this is how country houses should be used in the modern day and how people would like to see them.
Well, we'll see what happens. It's interesting to see how alternative financial models might be the thing to pull us out of some of the ideological madness that we've seen over the last 10 years or so. Anyway, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Historian broadcaster David Oldroyd-Bolt. Next on Free Speech Nation, a Canadian nurse and sex-based rights campaigner is fired from her profession after a 4-year ordeal for the heinous crime of pointing out that sex exists. And shortly, a couple arrested and detained for criticising their kids' school in a private WhatsApp group join me to discuss their dystopian ordeal with the authorities. This is GB News. This is Free Speech Nation. See you in a couple of minutes.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. We've got plenty of fine weather in store across the UK during the week ahead. Lots of warm sunshine to look forward to, but a bit of a cooling breeze too. High pressure starting to build in from the southwest now, low pressure moving off to the east, and it's this area of high pressure that will bring much quieter conditions to the UK as we go through the coming few days. Looking at things though in more detail for the overnight period, cloud across the north and east of the UK will tend to melt away to leave a lot of clear weather for a time overnight tonight, but notice towards the northwest there, clouds starting to increase again from off the Atlantic as we head into the early hours. And we could see some patchy rain across the far north and west of Scotland by the morning on Monday. Turning frosty across some southern parts, particularly in rural areas. Temperatures here down to -3, even -4 Celsius in one or two spots, but frost-free towards the northwest of the UK. So we start the new working week then with plenty of sunshine across the east and southeast of Scotland, a bit on the chilly side here. Cloudier towards the north and northwest with some outbreaks of rain, particularly across the northern and western Isles. Across Northern Ireland, mostly dry, but again, a fair bit of cloud around and some cloud across western parts of England and Wales, with the best of the sunshine at this stage across central and southeastern parts of England after quite a chilly start. We hold on to a good deal of sunshine across England and Wales as we go through the day on Monday. Always more in the way of cloud though as you head further north and northwest. That cloud thick enough towards the north and west of Scotland to give some patchy rain at times. Perhaps an isolated shower elsewhere across parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland, but certainly the best of the sunshine the further southeast you go. And fairly warm again in the sunshine, up to 16 or 17 Celsius, even reaching 17 or 18 across the Moray Firth of Scotland. Cooler though towards the northwest of Scotland. As we head into Tuesday, after a chilly start, lots of sunshine in store, almost wall-to-wall sunshine in fact across the bulk of the UK. Once again feeling pleasantly warm in the sunshine, out of the breeze certainly with temperatures into the mid, locally upper teens in Celsius. And we hold on to a good deal of sunshine across the UK during the rest of the week, and those temperatures still doing quite well too, but with some chilly nights, even a touch of frost in places still.
It's Patrick Christys tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christys tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dewbs and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. A nurse in Canada has lost her job after airing gender-critical views. Between July 2018 and March 2021, Amy Hamm has made comments across social media, including calling the concept of gender identity anti-scientific, metaphysical nonsense and referring to transgender women as men. Earlier this week, British Columbia College of Nurses and Midwives disciplinary panel ruled against Amy Hamm, saying she had made discriminatory and derogatory statements about transgender people, and just a few days ago she was fired from her nursing job after 13 years. I'm joined now by the woman at the centre of this story, Amy Hamm.
Hi.
Hey, Amy,
welcome. Having me.
Absolute pleasure. Amy, you've been on the show in the past, but for the people who might not be familiar with your story, if you could just give us some background, that would be great.
Sure. I've been writing about and advocating for women's sex-based rights for years. And in Canada, I'm a co-founder of an organization called CAUSEBAR, which is Canadian Women's Sex-Based Rights. So what we seek to do, we're a nonpartisan organization that would like to repeal Bill C-16 in Canada, which enabled males who identify as females to enter into all of our spaces, our prisons, our sports, rape shelters. And so that's what we do. And several years ago, I got some attention after helping to put up a billboard that said, "I heart J.K. Rowling." This was after J.K. Rowling came out in support of women's rights. So anyways, people realized that my day job was as a nurse, and they started complaining to my regulator. And for more than 4 years, I've been in this legal battle to keep my license through the BC College of Nurses, my regulator. And so I had this long, drawn-out case, more than 22 days of hearings, and I recently lost that. And shortly after that, the health authority in my province fired me.
So my understanding is that the last day of the hearings was actually a year ago. So it took them a whole year to come up with their findings here, finding you guilty for these supposed crimes of unprofessional conduct and being discriminatory and derogatory just for, as you say, stating biological fact. One of the most insane things that I read about this case was this idea that it says the panel understands that the statement there are only two sexes, male and female, is an simplification that does not align with current medical or biological understanding. So you have here a health body essentially saying there are more than two biological sexes.
You do, and the same is true of Vancouver Coastal Health, my employer, that just fired me. And, you know, their reasons for firing me, they spouted the same anti-scientific nonsense about, you know, it's untrue that there are only males and females, and it's discriminatory to suggest otherwise. So it's very concerning to me that we have these, you know, health authorities that have completely thrown science out the window and at the same time thrown women under the bus.
Yeah. I mean, it's a different situation in Canada, I think, isn't it, to the UK? Because we've had similar cases over here, Maya Forstater, and we've had the courts get involved. But in Canada, also in America, as you see, in Australia with the Giggle case, it seems like the captured organisations have gone that much further. Also to the point where even looking up your story, I follow you on X and have seen what you go through, you know, as a single mother and the fight that you've been putting on, which is frankly inspirational. But looking it up to find coverage in the media, it just seems like it's non-existent in Canada.
There is very little. A lot of Canadian women have been pushing really hard for this issue to get coverage at all. Our national broadcaster, the CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, has done a terrible job of covering the issue. They tend to quote trans activists and frame anyone in opposition to gender ideology as a hateful bigot. So it is starting to change, and you know, I'm a columnist at the National Post, which is the second largest paper in Canada, and we frequently talk about the gender issues. So things are opening up, but all of Canada's institutions are still ruled by gender ideologues, essentially.
Well, they're still in British institutions as well, but I guess the difference is the fight back has. There has been more successes. What's next then? Are you going to challenge the findings?
Absolutely. I'll do everything I can, both at the college case can be appealed to the BC Supreme Court here. And I'm supported by the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms in Canada. It's a group of constitutional lawyers that, you know, this is sort of their bread and butter. They take cases like this, and they've been supporting me for 4 years and will continue to do that. With the health authority, I'm unionized, but as I'm sure you're aware, a lot of the unions are as captured as the institutions are, and sometimes even more so than the employer. So I worry about how effective a union will be when they've also bought into gender ideology.
Yeah. So is there any indication that things might be changing? As you say, the media, it seems to be opening up a little bit. But do you think there might be this sort of counter reaction to Trump even, that he's come out so strongly protecting women's rights that Liberals in Canada might sort of see that as a way of retrenching?
It was Trump's executive order stating that there are males, and that was glorious. And, you know, unfortunately, I think what's been happening with our election now in Canada is that Trump has made our Conservative Party more timid about the gender issue, and it's almost as if they've backed off. They really haven't said much about it at all. I find that extremely frustrating because I know, doing the work that I do, that so many Canadians, this is at the top of their minds. It's a huge issue, and it should be an election issue, and it's not being made one right now.
OK. Well, Amy, just want to send you support from the UK, OK, what you've been going through. We're going to go to the weather now, but thank you so much for joining us.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update for the Met Office for GB News. We've got plenty of fine weather in store across the UK during the week ahead. Lots of warm sunshine to look forward to, but a bit of a cooling breeze too. High pressure starting to build in from the southwest now, low pressure moving off to the east, and it's this area of high pressure that will bring much quieter conditions to the UK as we go through the coming few days. Looking at things though in more detail for the overnight period, cloud across the north and east of the UK will tend to melt away to leave a lot of clear weather for a time overnight tonight, but notice towards the northwest there, clouds starting to increase again from off the Atlantic as we head into the early hours. We could see some patchy rain across the far north and west of Scotland by the morning on Monday. Turning frosty across some southern parts, particularly in rural areas. Temperatures here down to -3, even -4 Celsius in one or two spots, but frost-free towards the northwest of the UK. So we start the new working week then with plenty of sunshine across the east and southeast of Scotland, a bit on the chilly side here. Cloudier towards the north and northwest with some outbreaks of rain, particularly across the northern and western Isles. Across Northern Ireland, mostly dry, but again, a fair bit of cloud around and some cloud across western parts of England and Wales, with the best of the sunshine at this stage across central and southeastern parts of England after quite a chilly start. We hold on to a good deal of sunshine across England and Wales as we go through the day on Monday. Always more in the way of cloud though as you head further north and northwest. That cloud thick enough towards the north and west of Scotland to give some patchy rain at times. Perhaps an isolated shower elsewhere across parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland, but certainly the best of the sunshine the further southeast you go. And fairly warm again in the sunshine, up to 16 or 17 Celsius, even reaching 17 or 18 across the Moray Firth of Scotland. Cooler though towards the northwest of Scotland. As we head into Tuesday, after a chilly start, lots of sunshine in store, almost wall-to-wall sunshine in fact across the bulk of the UK. Once again feeling pleasantly warm in the sunshine, out of the breeze certainly with temperatures into the mid, locally upper teens in Celsius. And we hold on to a good deal of sunshine across the UK during the rest of the week, and those temperatures still doing quite well too, but with some chilly nights, even a touch of frost in places still.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could spruce up your spring, as we have an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash to be won. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also give you the latest Mulberry handbag, and not one, but two sought-after designer watches. Make sure you don't miss out, as lines close on the 4th of April. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dewberry and Cary weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Plenty more still to come on Free Speech Nation this week, including talking to the parents arrested for posting in their school's WhatsApp group. But first, let's get a news update from Tatiana Sanchez.
Good evening. The top stories from the GB Newsroom. Prince Harry has been accused of harassment and bullying by the chair of the charity he set up in Princess Diana's honour. Dr Sophie Chandauka has claimed the Duke of trying to sabotage the organisation before quitting earlier this week. She told reporters he wanted to eject her of the charity he founded in honour of his late mother. In response, we've heard from a source close to Harry and other trustees who left the charity Sentebale in solidarity this week. They said they fully expected this publicity stunt from the doctor. They remain firm in their resignation and look forward to the adjudication of the truth. The Home Secretary says plans for new checks on unauthorised working will help cut levels of illegal migration. Her comments come as the government will introduce tough new laws to clamp down on illegal working in the UK. Companies hiring people in the gig economy will now be legally required to carry out checks, confirming that anyone working in their name is eligible to work in the UK, bringing them in line with other employers. The term gig economy usually refers to short-term jobs, the most common examples including food delivery drivers and construction workers. That's all ahead of the government's first international summit on people smuggling gangs, which begins tomorrow in London. Elsewhere, rescue teams from around the world are in Myanmar after a powerful 7.7 magnitude earthquake struck on Friday, killing 1,700 people. Experts saying the death toll could rise to 10,000. The UK government has pledged up to £10 million in life-saving aid. The UN's warning a severe shortage of medical supplies at the moment is hampering the response to the deadly quake as the search for survivors continues. Over 300 people are reportedly still missing. In neighbouring Thailand, the death toll in Bangkok has risen to 18, 78 still missing there. Hundreds are believed to still be trapped under the rubble of collapsed buildings. Back home, a 54-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder after a fire at a historic former station house which killed 3 people, including a 4-year-old girl. Emergency services were called around 10:30 p.m. on Friday to reports of a large blaze at a property in Rushden near Kettering. The other victims are believed to be a 30-year-old woman and a 23-year-old man, according to police. A man from Kettering was arrested on suspicion of murder yesterday and remains in police custody. And former Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, says he forgives serial abuser John Smith as he repeated an apology to victims and told of the deep sense of personal failure he feels about the handling of allegations. The former most senior bishop in the Church of England, who resigned in November and stepped down officially in January, said he'd not really thought it through enough when he initially declined to quit last year. The Makin report into John Smith concluded Mr Welby did not adequately follow up on reports about the Christian camp leader and barrister. It said Smith might have been brought to justice had Mr Welby formally reported the allegations to police in 2013. Those are the latest headlines for now. More news in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howie. Let's get some more questions now from our audience. Our first question is from Anton.
Can Stockwell be trusted?
Can Stonewall be trusted? Yes. Stockwell, I have been to Stockwell a few times and the answer is no. let's talk about Stonewall for a second there. The new head of Stonewall. I would like it if Stonewall was called Stockwall. I think there would be a different outcome. So anyway, the new head of Stonewall has pledged to fight for a ban on conversion practices that includes every member of the lesbian, gay, bi and trans community, as he said that the progress of Labour's bill may be exploited by those pursuing global attacks on LGBTQ+ rights. So straight away, I see an issue with that. He's talking about LGBT rights, but then of course, LGBTQ+ is then... that's added to it. He's not talking about Q+ rights.
Right.
I'm just saying there are people who are part of the Q+,
yes,
who might say, well, why aren't you fighting for rights for...
And he's not mentioning them.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. He's saying LGBT,
right,
and then later on it's being switched to LGBTQ+, but he's not specifically.
I mean, it's an odd one, isn't it? That,
or is it a retreat, is my point, actually. Well, can you have conversion?
That's what
I guess what I'm saying is some of the people in part of the Q and the plus, they're, say, some asexual. Right?
Yeah. Oh, there's everything in there.
Could you have someone sort of being... Are they proposing rights that people shouldn't be able to convert an asexual?
Well, there's loads of them still not covered in the LGBTQIP2SAA+, I think you'll find. Which includes lots of odd ones, including two souls, which doesn't even make any sense in the UK because that's an American native thing.
And that's actually not a Native American thing because it was found to be a creation from the 1990s.
Yeah, it goes back even further, yeah, of course. Look, I, as far as whatever people are and how they identify, I'm fine with it. I'm in the entertainment business where everyone is a weirdo except me. That's all. It's been part of our business for a long time. But this obsession has just gone crazy. And where the conversion thing starts with gay conversion, largely a Christian thing, and it's like tying weights to people's testicles or electric shocks and so on. They tried the same thing with the fetish community.
Wait a minute, are you telling me that my wife's been trying to convert me? I thought that was Saturday night.
Has it worked?
No, I still love her.
It's a question of where this is, because you've got an identity who for years now have been telling confused adolescents that they must be trans and giving out puberty blockers and other chemicals and so on. And now what they're against is any attempt to convert them away from that, to say maybe you're not. Well, and it depends where it goes, Josh. It depends whether we're talking about a parent talking to their children or a doctor saying give it a few years and then see how you're feeling about yourself, or whether we're talking about something more aggressive.
I mean, Cary's made a point here that I don't think I've ever heard before, because this conversion bill has been around for a few years, and under the Tories they were very much against it. And for people who aren't familiar with what the debate, the idea is that by trying to ban conversion of young trans people or people who are gender confused or young men and women, the idea is that if you put them into therapy to talk around these issues that usually have been connected to autism or trauma, that actually you could be arrested or prosecuted under this law. What's interesting that Cary said is, if this is about conversion, well, the argument is in the part of the Hilary Cass report is that it's a social phenomenon, which is young girls particularly being converted into thinking that they are non-binary or actually a boy. I wonder if it could be flipped to actually prosecute people who'd taken part in that. I'd never heard that angle put forward before.
Yeah, it's a good point. What is conversion? I mean, I am an example from my own life. A friend of mine who's a doctor, she had a patient who wanted to transition, very obese man, 25 stone, and agoraphobic. So she said to him, I hear you, but maybe you should go to the psychiatrist first and also deal with the weight, because not only will you feel more yourself, the weight will give you estrogen, which might, cause thoughts of being feminine. And so she recommended he go to Overeaters Anonymous and he go to the psychiatrist. And he thanked her for that. But then she got in trouble with trans medicine in Ireland, saying that it wasn't a psychiatric illness. Now, I think she was looking at somebody holistically. I myself was a massive tomboy when I was young. It was a kind of a detention-seeking thing. I didn't identify as this classical female Barbie-playing girl. But I think if I had been around now, I would be very kind of easily converted.
Well, I think the interesting point is that the new head of Stonewall is basically, when this was raised in an interview, essentially said, no, all evidence says that actually when it comes to trans conversion, that it's fine that these laws exist. And you've just given an exact example of where it's not fine. That's the point. Right, our next question is from Jeff.
Thanks, Josh. Should BBC chiefs have anti-Semitism training?
Yes, should BBC chiefs have anti-Semitism training? This is Tim Davie, the BBC's Director General, refused anti-Semitism training for the broadcaster. What he's said is that they don't need it, but essentially the government's advisor on anti-Jewish hatred has revealed. This is Lord Mann, Sir Keir Starmer's independent advisor on anti-Semitism, said he had visited BBC bosses to offer training on 3 occasions since taking up his role in 2019. However, he said senior figures turned down his repeated offers despite growing fears of an anti-Semitism problem at the BBC. Are you familiar with these accusations that the Jewish community has been made towards the BBC in terms of this Hamas documentary and bias against Israel and Jews?
Yeah, I think as a leader of an organisation, I think you should...
Actually, would you mind just putting my...
I think you should set an example, and you want people to pay the licence fee, and that includes everyone. So if you're expecting Jewish people and everyone else to pay the licence fee, then surely you should step up.
That's a great point. Yeah. I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's have a report. Look at that. Your first question on the show, when you get a round of applause.
You made the whole audience applaud, which was what, 7 people.
But that's an amazing point, right?
It was a very good point. And it's also that I am actually, on one hand, I'm against the BBC having anti-Semitism training, because if they have to do that, you know who they're going to blame: the Jews. Yeah. Anyway, do you know what I've begun to realise is you can, if you really want to know what's going on with Israel at any time, don't go by what the BBC is telling you. Go by their apologies. That tells you everything that's going on.
Wait till 2 days later.
Yeah, I mean, look, the number of incidents now has stacked up, and it's just getting silly to me. And it's I want to say this actually is that. What happened after October the 7th, for me, and I think a lot of Jewish people, is it kind of brought history alive in that I knew of things like the Dreyfus affair, which, if you know about that, is a French army officer who was accused of being a traitor based on the fact that his handwriting wasn't the same as that of the traitor. And I always understood the story for what it was, for what happened in the court case. But now I understand it for what it did, what was happening in the media at the time, the alienation Jewish people felt, seeing friends and colleagues suddenly coming out with stuff that was, like, outrageous and going, oh, wow, that's what people around me think. So it kind of brought all this to bear. And I think with that history, there is some responsibility for the BBC to understand it, at least.
Yeah, I mean, the accusations go that it shows a certain arrogance to sort of think, oh, no, I don't need any training because I know everything there is, even though your institution that you're leading has been accused multiple times of anti-Semitism. Aideen, you're not Jewish, so you're not going to talk about this bit. Anyway, let's move on to...
Well, I do hope to marry into the religion
I should
for
say the BBC spokesman said, as an organisation, the BBC stands united against any form of abuse, prejudice or intolerance. We have strengthened the range of training and support available to all the organisation's employees. Our next question is from John.
Hello, Josh. How much has denying the existence of biological reality cost us?
Yeah, how much is denying the existence of biological reality cost us? We're talking here not just society, we're talking actually cold, hard cash, because this is the recent Kathleen Stock case, which we talked about earlier, show that the costs for denying sex is real, are rising. As recently pointed out in a column by Janice Turner, every other week it seems that taxpayers are picking up a hefty tab when a government employee wins an employment tribunal after being bullied for simply believing that sex is real. This ideological capture of government must be costing a fortune, but how much? Aideen, the cases just stack on top of each other. Some of them costing up to like $500,000, if not more, just for all the reports, for the legal fees. When are these institutions actually going to learn their lesson?
Yeah, they're going to have to learn their lesson fairly quickly, because you cannot, for me anyway, you cannot deny biology. You know, it's for our own medical protection. I remember when I came to England first and I went to the doctor and they asked me what race I was, and I thought, duh. But they said, are you white Irish? And I thought, why are they asking me this? And then I asked a doctor friend of mine and she says, well, you know, it's for your own protection because Irish people have certain diseases that are more prevalent. Similarly, we have to know people's biological sex in order to be able to help them medically. So this whole idea of firing somebody because they advocate for that is ridiculous.
But but what we're talking about here, and I obviously agree with you, but what we're talking about is there's the financial penalty of doing so, which because these are government-funded institutions, so the taxpayer is paying for it. And, of course, the taxpayer, as was also pointed out in this column, is paying doubly because they are paying for organisations like Stonewall, who have been activist organisations who have arguably given the wrong legal advice that have got these institutions into this place in the right place.
But lawyers are making a fortune
Yeah.
They're doing really well out of this. They love it all.
Well, that's the best thing about this story.
Yes.
So, anyway, does London have a problem with... Oh, actually, sorry, Chris. Well, answer. Sorry, Chris. Sorry, mate.
That's right.
I'm so eager for this question to be asked.
Does London have a problem with whiteness?
Does London have a problem with whiteness? I just sort of read your mind there. You see, does London have a problem with garbage? No, whiteness. This is London Museum urging their staff to address the problem of embedded whiteness as part of a diversity drive. Details have emerged over the last few days. The publicity-funded museum focused on the history of London. They've reportedly created a leaflet to help staff to challenge embedded whiteness in the workplace. What's embedded whiteness?
Well, there's more people in London, I think, that aren't British than in any other capital city other than Dubai. But then when you think of all the millions of people who were white living in London for years and years and years, a lot of the history is going to be white. I think people get annoyed by this sort of thing because of the language that's used. Like, it says, do you encourage people to bring their whole selves to work? It's vague. And it doesn't make any sense. Like, if I brought my whole self to work, I'd be arrested. I can't even bring my whole self to the streets, you know? Like, my whole self is not a good person. So it's kind of woolly. But I suppose what it is encouraging is people to maybe, you know, use their natural hairstyles or dress in a way that's ethnically appropriate for them. And that's not a bad thing.
So I'm not allowed to go to work wearing dreadlocks?
No, I don't think so. But you could have a yarmulke and all of that. It'd be great, very cute.
No, Jews don't count.
They don't. And I mean, like, London museums are great. They've loads of ethnic diversity. They've got the Elgin marbles. They've got the mummies. They've got the pyramids. Not the pyramids, not yet.
So, and also, I believe the people who work for this for the museum in London, they have to ask themselves every day, how am I contributing to advancing racial equity in my daily work? So I'm imagining for a tour guide, it would be like, OK, all ethnic minorities, come to the front. You've been queued up too long.
It sounds like they've got a bit too much time on their hands, doesn't it, really? I mean, I understand we've got to deal with our embedded whiteness, and I'm constantly trying to get out of bed with my whiteness. I spend too much time in bed with it, to be honest. In fact, most of my time when I can. But the history was racist and sexist. I think in its core values, the Black rights movements and the feminist movement of the 20th century were massive changes of society and very important. But they've gone into ideologies now where we're just obsessed with everything. And what we should be doing... One day we're going to have museums that will look at the ideology of our museums of this century. You know, we'll have...
What, the woke museum?
The woke museum, the woke 21st century. But history was racist and sexist, and we should be looking at that and talking about it and discussing it rather than trying to keep it all going and, you know, making this obsession.
Yeah, right. Well, next on Free Speech Nation, hitting the headlines this week have been the parents who dared to go on a private WhatsApp group and voice concerns about their children's school, only to be arrested and detained by police. Maxi Allen joins me in a second to tell me their shocking story. You do not want to miss it. Stay tuned.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Is artificial intelligence smarter than you?
Smarter than me?
And me?
I can't even log onto the computer.
Ministers have been told that could be the truth as soon as next year.
There's experts are saying artificial intelligence will overtake human intelligence and that more jobs could be at risk than we think if we don't prepare.
So let's speak now to the CEO of Automated Analytics, Mark Taylor. Good morning, Mark. First of all, will you just explain to us, Mark, when we're talking about AI, what do we actually mean?
So I think what we've got to understand is it's actually artificial intelligence, not artificial consciousness. So I'm still not aware of anybody that can teach a computer common sense. I think that's the big difference between human beings and artificial intelligence. This whole thing about AGI, which AGI stands for Artificial General Intelligence, the idea of their AI computer being able to process cognitive abilities similar to a human, so they can allow it to kind of calculate and learn intellectual tasks just like a person. So we've implemented AI across 5,000 companies, both in the UK and US. There's not a single reported job loss.
I'm struggling to believe that, Mark.
But companies have actually employed more people because we've made organisations more efficient. I mean, making organisations more efficient means they're more profitable, and therefore they can hire more people. So if I take Pizza Hut in America, we've actually increased their employed members of staff by 4%. It'll never be 100%. It'll never be better than a human being because we've got common sense. It's ingrained in us. You know, we learn it from a very young age. And so therefore it won't ever replace us. It'll just make us better.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Now for a really shocking story. Parents Maxi Allen and Rosalind Levine were arrested after a dispute with their child's school following emails and messages shared in a parent's WhatsApp group. 6 police officers arrived at their home. They were taken into custody for 8 hours and the home was searched, all in front of their young child. After a 5-week investigation, no further action was taken, but they're still trying to understand why it happened. Joining me now is the man at the centre of this scandal, Maxi Allen. Maxi, welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, this is featured extensively in the press this week, rightly so. Would you mind, in your own words, telling us the story of what happened?
Well, I'd start by saying that I never set out to be a poster boy for free speech. I'm not a commentator on policing issues. These are just the things that happened. And I thought it was really a story that shouldn't go untold. So we've told the story. And in many ways, we'll leave it to other people to judge the significance. And it could be a freak occurrence. Or do these things happen more often than we realise? Well, that would be interesting to find out. The essential point of it is very much as you've just described it. I was sitting in this very room when 2 police officers came in. I was on a Zoom call just like this and arrested me. And in the sitting room, another pair of officers arrested my partner, Rosalind, in front of our 3-year-old daughter. Another pair searched the house. We're taken to custody. Eventually interviewed, where they presented us with no material evidence of anything, either harassment or malicious communications. We're shown no examples of it. And we were released on police bail. And for the next few weeks, we had to sweat over it because although we knew we'd done nothing wrong, we couldn't help wonder if whatever bizarre logic had got us arrested could then get us charged. And that would have enormous implications for our lives. And that didn't come to pass. And in the end, the officer rang us up and said, I found no evidence for these offences. And we were given a no further action notice. And then kind of here we are. And as I say, I think I wanted just to say what had happened, because I think it shouldn't have gone untold. But how significant or not it is for free speech and policing and police responses, in many ways, I think that's for other people to judge.
We're seeing footage now of the police outside of your home. 6 police officers. That's the sort of numbers you would expect for some kind of violent offence or drugs. 6 officers turning up in this manner. I would say no police officers is the right number of officers here, but the fact it's 6 is so insanely excessive, right?
Well, yes. I mean, it seemed to me the kind of operation you'd associate with a terror cell or a drug den or organised crime. And what we can't understand is why they had reported concerns, they needed to check them out. Why couldn't they just ask us in for a scheduled formal interview where we could at least arrange childcare and not have our neighbours baffled and shell-shocked by what had happened and what they witnessed? There were 2 police cars and a police van parked on our road.
So, I mean, just the question that I have is why, of course, why are they doing this when they don't have evidence? But the fact that they don't have any evidence before they arrest you, that's what seems very topsy-turvy here. They're arresting you literally on the say-so of this school, it seems like. That's it, just to say so. No evidence.
Well, that's how it seems to us, because when we were interviewed by the detective towards the end of the day, who'd had no previous involvement with the case, he did not have any material evidence. He had a vague statement from one of the complainants, and that was that. So, for example, malicious communications, what I was imagining was that he would say, did you do this, and did you write that, and did you post this? There was none of that. He offered not one example. So what happened between the police being contacted and them deciding to send 6 police officers to our house is a very good question. And, when you read a lot of the online comments and tweets around this, people say, well, there must have been something else going on. Well, the gap in the story is one that I can't explain. It can only be another one of the other organisations involved who can explain why one thing led to the other.
Well, it's almost like the gap in the story.
That's why it does feel Kafkaesque.
Yeah, well, the gap in the story kind of is the story. And it should be, just to go back a little bit, we're talking about some messages on a parents' WhatsApp group because you had some issues with the deputy head being sort of promoted essentially to the head role. These are very normal concerns. I belong to probably about 7 or 8 parent WhatsApp groups through the years, and ones that they've left primary school. It's scary for any parent who kind of is in these groups, and the things that are said, where you have to kind of go, wait a minute, me questioning this teacher and what they taught, or really anything, could anything be used against me in this manner?
Well, there's, I think, some very interesting questions to be asked and discussion to be had about whether organisations have, whether your WhatsApps and a private group are fair game for public authorities. I would say they are not. For example, I think if an authority eavesdrops on a private conversation, as appears to have happened in this case, it is exactly the same as opening letters. So if someone intercepted your mail and opened it and read your letter, that's exactly the same as eavesdropping a private conversation. This WhatsApp group in particular was a private group between about 12 and 15 people on it, with no one connected to the school. And there probably aren't very many people in the country who aren't on a WhatsApp group of some kind. And here's a parallel I've drawn. Many people on a street WhatsApp group, and they might well chirp about the bins haven't been emptied, or council tax is too high, there's too many potholes. They wouldn't then expect to get a letter from the council saying, I've seen your WhatsApps, and then passing it on to the police. So I think what's happened is that legislation around discourse and what is acceptable or not to say has not kept up with the way we communicate now, where we all write things down all the time and share them with each other. It hasn't caught up. And I think in a way, one way to look at it in terms of criticism and comment and the digital marketplace of conversations, trying to stop that and trying to control it is a bit like trying to stop it raining. It's going to be impossible. Now, of course, sometimes there are genuine cases of abuse, and things might come to light from private conversations which might reveal genuine criminal activity. Or, for example, in a parent's WhatsApp context, a safeguarding issue for a child, in which case you could say it will pass a public interest test. But I think most people would agree that that public interest test, the bar needs to be set really very, very high.
Well, it doesn't seem like there's a bar at all. You mentioned that example of potholes, but actually there was someone who was taken in for police questioning for putting up messages on Facebook about their local councillors. So this is far from the only incident of this kind. I guess it's just kind of the latest, if not the most egregious. But this has been a sort of encroachment that has been ever more seen in the public space over the last couple of years. Do you think cases like yours are actually going to make a difference? Because we've been covering this kind of thing for years now on this show, and even though the police are repeatedly admonished, they don't seem to learn their lesson.
Well, I'm not a policing expert, and I'm not a policing commentator, and I have no agenda here. But it seems as if between the legislation, between what's expected of the police, and how they deal with complaints and then make decisions, just speaking generally, something isn't working. And why? I don't know, because I'm not a policing expert. But yes, there are a number of similar stories. I think professional police officers would probably argue that they're put in a very difficult position sometimes. People come to them with genuine complaints. They might exhibit distress, and the legislation is ambiguous in certain respects, and individual police officers who may not have that much experience are put in quite a difficult position. These are quite difficult questions to answer, because sometimes there will be genuine cases of abuse where intervention is necessary. I can't answer all those questions in the time we have tonight, I'm afraid, John.
Well, I guess the point is that your situation hopefully will start or get more people to engage with these questions to see how, frankly, if it could happen to you, normal family, making some complaints, legitimate complaints against their school, to then be arrested. If it can happen to you, it can happen to any of us. And hopefully more and more people will wake up. So thank you very much for speaking out on this issue. I hope that we can actually close some of these loopholes. Anyway, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Maxi Allen. Spokesman for Hertfordshire County Council said following the departure of the former head teacher, an interim head was appointed for the one term to allow time for a proper recruitment process to be carried out. The role was advertised publicly and the recruitment was supported by external professional advisors. We are confident that this was a fair, transparent and timely process. OK, have universities reached breaking point? A new paper explores how decades of change have fuelled campus anti-Semitism, from failed leadership to radical anti-Zionism after October 7th. Is academic freedom at risk? And that affects all of us. Next on Free Speech Nation, the face of academia in the US, Cary Nelson, joins me. You don't want to miss it.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there. We continue to stay unsettled across central and eastern parts of the Mediterranean, with further heavy showers and thunderstorms, some localised flooding possible. Through Monday, we can see across much of Greece into Italy those heavy downpours continuing, some brisk winds, feeling quite cold too, but drier further west into Spain and Portugal, sunny spells before heading over to Madeira, where there'll be some showers here, and largely dry across the Canary Islands. Over the next few days, it stays fairly similar, temperatures in the sunshine reaching the low 20s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
It's Patrick Christys tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christys tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
I ended up being hospitalised, and I was diagnosed with it within the first few days of being in hospital. I was in hospital for 2 months, and I came out about 13 months ago, something like that. And I realised that there are people that aren't as lucky as me that don't have that platform to be able to talk about it, bring it out in the public, and deal with the stigma, because there is still a stigma.
A lot of people don't really know what bipolar is. So in you, Heston, how did it manifest itself?
It's funny because before the diagnosis, I mean, many things, from thinking the TV was talking to me to hallucinating stuff. The downside is suicidal thoughts, which seemed normal at the time. The upside is the thing there's grandiosity, somewhere between Superman and Jesus Christ.
Wow.
Save the world, love everybody, everything is fantastic. And then it comes crashing down. It's a bit like a toddler, you know, an overexcited child. And when a kid gets overexcited, and then something happens, and then they start crying.
Wow. So massive highs, big lows.
Yeah, but I thought everything was normal. It's only now that I've come out the other side, so to speak, that I look back and can see some of the character traits. I mean, my patience levels were almost non-existent before. I'm a lot more patient. I'm talking much slower. I was talking very quickly.
GB News, the People's Channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. A new paper called Mindless: What Happened to Universities takes a hard look at how decades of structural changes in higher education have led to a crisis. Cary Nelson argues that universities are at a breaking point, threatening not just Jewish and Israeli students, but the very future of academic freedom. Professor Emeritus Cary Nelson joins me in the studio now. Welcome very much.
Happy to be here.
Your first visit to the UK in 20 years.
Right.
Do you mind just telling our audience a little bit about your history?
Well, I mean, I saw myself for many years as someone on the left, and I still hold progressive values. I believe in universal health care, which probably there aren't too many of you who would object to that principle, but the U.S. is a long way from recognizing that. It's common in the U.S. to think that you deserve health care if you can afford to pay for it.
But you've also been arrested for standing up for your union.
I stood up. I worked for 20 years while I was teaching. I organized graduate students for collective bargaining and also contingent or sessional faculty, as you call them, that is people who weren't hired permanently. And basically graduate students, graduate employees do a lot of teaching in American universities. And, you know, they often, at the period when we were working, they often had no health care. They often had no job security at all. And they really didn't have guarantees of due process. If they got in difficulty, they couldn't count for someone advocating for them, someone professionally speaking on their behalf. And so really, and they often were paid slave wages, to say the best, less than minimum wage. So they needed advocates, and so I helped them organize for collective bargaining. During that time, I never had, because I traveled the whole country doing that, I never once experienced anti-Semitism or anti-Zionism among the groups that I was helping to organize. Sadly, the very unions I've helped to organize have now shifted toward anti-Zionism. And one can define anti-Zionism for these people as hatred of Israel that transforms itself into hatred of Jews worldwide. And, you know, that's been a general transformation on the international left, certainly in the U.S. And for me, it's been extremely painful to watch because I've been committed to Zionism since I was a child. My father organized and became the president of 2 synagogues. You know, we had some commitments that are built into me.
I don't think people understand how Zionism as a political movement actually very much started on the left. And in terms of, you know, you had kibbutzes, which are arguably communist in scope, and then it was only later on that it seems now that being a Zionist somehow makes you far right, according to some people.
Kibbutzim, some were connected to the party. They're much more commonly socialist. That is, you know, committed to socialist principles, and a few still survive in exactly that form, some of which were, of course, violently assaulted by Hamas. So, I mean, the left for me meant a series of progressive values. I believed in the necessity of income redistribution, that the poor deserve some of the wealth of the country, not just the fate of their families and their education. So being on the left meant really a series of progressive forms of social progress. But the left is now much more focused obsessively on what it opposes. The left was once about what it was for. Now it's, as much as anything else, what it's against. And what it's against, alas, includes Israel. What it's against is not a good philosophical basis for a political movement. It's a good basis for antagonism. It's a good basis for hostile debate. But it isn't a good basis in which to imagine a future. You can't think of how society should grow and what changes society should make if what you are is focused on hating. And that's, unfortunately, a lot of what's become of the left. And it's also become, unfortunately, what faculty members who see themselves on the left and teach in universities do. 20 years ago, well, let's say 25 years ago, I really never thought of education as indoctrination. And when people made that claim to me, I said, I don't think so. I said, there may be gestures toward that, but overall, higher education supports open debate. It welcomes controversy. It welcomes challenges to ideas. But now too many faculty members feel they know the absolute truth. And what they want to do is impose that truth on their students. That's not education. You're supposed to get students to think about issues and then to make up their own mind. Now, this is not by any means all disciplines. It's not true of the sciences. It's not true of the STEM fields. But it is widely true of the humanities, my own fields, that have adopted these forms of intellectual and political conviction and then decided to try to impose them on their students. It's very destructive, and there are things that colleges and universities need to do to try to change that pattern. It's going to be hard work. And one of the things this book, this sort of cute little book, I'm very fond of the color, Mindless, very easy to remember that. And the Jewish Journal issues 4 of these books each year, one by a single author, in this case by me. So, if you subscribe, you get these rather attractive little, almost pocket-sized books that you can read about. The next one's going to be about Zionism. It will try to redefine Zionism for the contemporary moment. But there are, to go back to the key point, first of all, there are several humanities disciplines, some social science disciplines, that have now become thoroughly committed to the hatred of the state of Israel. Anthropology has become a discipline committed to convincing its students that Israel is great evil. Middle East studies is gone. It's lost. It can't be repaired. It has to be set aside and allowed to die out slowly and then be replaced by a more open form of debate. And women's studies, unfortunately, has gone that way as well. By 2015, the National Organization for Women's Studies issued an incredibly hostile, formal statement opposing Israel. So imagine you're a student at a university. You enter a department like anthropology or women's studies, and you go to the main page, and the department declares, we are opposed to the Jewish state. We think that it's committing genocide. We think that it is fundamentally evil. We think you can't fix the Jewish state. There's no policies you can get them to change. You simply have to eliminate it. If you're a Zionist student, how do you function in that department? How do you take courses? How do you write papers? How do you feel that your opinions will be respected? People can debate opinions in the academy. That's what it's all about. But you can't declare that your students are advocates of evil, which is what happens to Zionist students in these departments. And that's something we're going to have to work at. I think there are some specific things we can do. I really think adopting the IRA definition of anti-Semitism is a great help. especially because it has 11 examples, and the students can discuss those examples, they can debate them, but it gives them categories. Anti-Semitism changes all the time. It's amorphous. It's often confusing to people. But that IRA definition gives you 11 contemporary forms of anti-Semitism. So you encounter a statement and you ask, does it fit into the 11 examples or does it not? Does it really belong there or can it be excused? And they're very sensible. So the IRA definition says that any criticism of Israel that's similar to things you would say about other countries is not anti-Semitic. Yeah. You can criticize that, and like you can criticize Britain or any other country.
I just want to widen the scope here, because the argument goes that Jews are the canary in the coal mine. In this case, you talk about the ideological capture of universities in America. Also, we've seen it in the UK as well. What's the impact beyond Zionism or beyond anti-Zionism? Is this just this one topic that then leads to a cessation of debate in other arenas as well, and that's how this impacts people?
Yeah, unfortunately, anti-Zionism has become the center of a process by which the university is being transformed. And so the polarization of the university, that is the division of faculty opinion that's sharp and divided and intolerant of one another. The patterns on British campuses, 35 British campuses, that we saw in spring 2024, which exemplified the same patterns we saw at 150 American campuses, where students felt there was a right point of view and a wrong point of view. And if you were on the wrong side of that divide, you needn't be respected. You needn't be tolerated. Faculty members began to take the position, especially this group called Faculty in Support of Palestine, they began to take the position that if the university asked them to serve on a committee, assigned them to do committee work, and they found out there was a Zionist faculty member of the committee, they should refuse to walk in the room. I won't sit with him. I won't talk to him.
And 96% of Jews.
So you begin to see, once you see Middle East in black and white terms, you start to see the rest of your intellectual life in the same way, and the coherence of the model of what university education should be disintegrates. So everything begins to become polarized.
I think that's exactly the point. I'm afraid we are going to have to leave you. Good luck. You also believe giving a talk tomorrow at Houses of Parliament, and also good luck with your book. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Joining us, Cary Nelson. Next on Free Speech Nation, it's social sensations, the funniest viral moments of the week. See you in a couple of minutes. Thank you.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. We've got plenty of fine weather in store across the UK during the week ahead. Lots of warm sunshine to look forward to, but a bit of a cooling breeze too. High pressure starting to build in from the southwest now, low pressure moving off to the east, and it's this area of high pressure that will bring much quieter conditions to the UK as we go through the coming few days. Looking at things though in more detail for the overnight period, cloud across the north and east of the UK will tend to melt away to leave a lot of clear weather for a time overnight tonight, but notice towards the northwest there, clouds starting to increase again from off the Atlantic as we head into the early hours. We could see some patchy rain across the far north and west of Scotland by the morning on Monday. Turning frosty across some southern parts, particularly in rural areas. Temperatures here down to -3, even -4 Celsius in one or two spots, but frost-free towards the northwest of the UK. So we start the new working week then with plenty of sunshine across the east and southeast of Scotland, a bit on the chilly side here. Cloudier towards the north and northwest with some outbreaks of rain, particularly across the northern and western Isles. Across Northern Ireland, mostly dry, but again, a fair bit of cloud around and some cloud across western parts of England and Wales, with the best of the sunshine at this stage across central and southeastern parts of England after quite a chilly start. We hold on to a good deal of sunshine across England and Wales as we go through the day on Monday. Always more in the way of cloud, though, as you head further north and northwest. That cloud thick enough towards the north and west of Scotland to give some patchy rain at times. Perhaps an isolated shower elsewhere across parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland, but certainly the best of the sunshine the further southeast you go. And fairly warm again in the sunshine, up to 16 or 17 Celsius, even reaching 17 or 18 across the Moray Firth of Scotland. Cooler, though, towards the northwest of Scotland. As we head into Tuesday, after a chilly start, lots of sunshines in store, almost wall-to-wall sunshine, in fact, across the bulk of the UK. Once again, feeling pleasantly warm in the sunshine, out of the breeze, certainly, with temperatures into the mid, locally upper teens in Celsius. And we hold on to a good deal of sunshine across the UK during the rest of the week, and those temperatures still doing quite well too, but with some chilly nights, even a touch of frost in places still.
Headliners on GB News 11 PM every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 PM and 5 AM as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's time now for Social Sensations, the part of the show where we take a look at what's been going viral this week on social media. First up, X has been going mad with AI-generated anime-style images of famous photos. One thread that went viral contained countless cartoon versions of iconic moments in British politics. We thought we'd take you through a few. Let's see if my panel and my audience can guess who is who. Here's the first one. Who is that?
Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Jacob Rees-Mogg. There he is, GB News presenter. There we go. Who's the next one now?
John Prescott.
John Prescott, very good there. Yeah, that's quite complimentary, that anime, actually.
He looks great.
Next one. Anne Widdecombe, yes. There it is, Anne Widdecombe, very good there. Yeah,
I thought they were
you're on top of
Prescott.
this. Yeah. Who's next, then? Last one. I know this one. Anyone say? George Galloway, yes. The infamous cat sketch there. Very good. I don't know which one makes me more nauseous. So, next up is this video.
It's interesting because a lot of your thinking, as expressed by your public statements, is deeply infused with economic and cultural Marxism. Do you believe that America is addicted to white supremacy?
I believe that I tweeted that, and as I've said earlier, I believe much of my thinking has evolved over the last half-decade.
It has evolved. Why did you tweet that?
I don't recall the exact context, sir, so I wouldn't be able to say.
Okay. Do you believe that America believes in black plunder and white democracy?
I don't believe that, sir.
You tweeted that in reference to a book you were reading at the time, apparently, The Case for Reparations.
I don't think I've ever read that book, sir.
You tweeted about it.
This is my favourite video of the week. This is being interviewed, the head of NPR, and then he basically just spends the whole of his time interviewing, going, "Did you say this? No, no." And then he's like, "This is your tweet." And I guess we're going to see more of this.
This is the age grim, isn't it?
This is it. It's like, oh, you didn't say this, and then it turns out, of course, you did, and no one's actually deleting any of their messages from the madness of the last 10 years.
I like the way I'm going to use this myself, where she tried to make it sound like so long ago by saying half a decade ago.
Yeah.
Like 5 years.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
My thinking has evolved.
My thinking has evolved. I don't know what you're talking about there. Next up is this video.
The Defence Secretary and the Vice...
Wait, what country are you
from? From the UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting. Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
Defence Secretary Hegseth need to resign over this, Representative?
Absolutely not. He's doing a great job.
He's doing a great job, but he was putting American service members' lives at risk.
Your country's going to put
this is deflect
lives fighting a war in Ukraine that's not even a member of NATO.
That's one of our competitors. No, but I respect. I mean, good on the reporter. She stuck to it. She was like, "Yeah, I'm going to go for it."
This woman is like the hawk to a woman lost her sense of humour and went into politics. She's the worst person I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, it's Marjorie Taylor Greene. How does Trump manage to find people who are even weirder than him?
Well, that's
even nuttier. I think he does it deliberately to sort of take the heat off.
That's why you two are here.
That was unnecessary.
No, I think it's fair enough. Well, anyway, so I take it back. I apologise. Thank you for joining me. That's the end of the show. Let's give a big thank you to my panel, Kerry Marks and AD McQueen, all of my brilliant guests this evening. Let's do it, guys. Also, if you want to join us live in the studio and be part of our audience, you can. Please go to www.sroaudiences.com. Should be said today, of course, is Mother's Day, so happy Mother's Day, and thank you guys for coming out and for obviously having terrible relationships with your mothers. Much appreciated there. Stay tuned for the brilliant Ben Leo tonight. That is next. Don't forget, of course, Headliners on every night at 11 p.m. That's a late night paper preview show where comedians talk you through the next day's top stories. And please have a brilliant week. Thank you very much for joining us for Free Speech Nation. Goodbye.
Yay.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. We've got plenty of fine weather in store across the UK during the week ahead. Lots of warm sunshine to look forward to, but a bit of a cooling breeze too. High pressure starting to build in from the southwest now, low pressure moving off to the east, and it's this area of high pressure that will bring much quieter conditions to the UK as we go through the coming few days. Looking at things though in more detail for the overnight period, cloud across the north and east of the UK will tend to melt away to leave a lot of clear weather for a time overnight tonight, but notice towards the northwest there, clouds starting to increase again from off the Atlantic as we head into the early hours. We could see some patchy rain across the far north and west of Scotland by the morning on Monday. Turning frosty across some southern parts, particularly in rural areas. Temperatures here down to -3, even -4 Celsius in one or two spots, but frost-free towards the northwest of the UK. So we start the new working week then with plenty of sunshine across the east and southeast of Scotland, a bit on the chilly side here. Cloudier towards the north and northwest with some outbreaks of rain, particularly across the northern and western Isles. Across Northern Ireland, mostly dry, but again, a fair bit of cloud around and some cloud across western parts of England and Wales, with the best of the sunshine at this stage across central and southeastern parts of England after quite a chilly start. We hold on to a good deal of sunshine across England and Wales as we go through the day on Monday. Always more in the way of cloud though as you head further north and northwest. That cloud thick enough towards the north and west of Scotland to give some patchy rain at times. Perhaps an isolated shower elsewhere across parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland, but certainly the best of the sunshine the further southeast you go. And fairly warm again in the sunshine, up to 16 or 17 Celsius, even reaching 17 or 18 across the Moray Firth of Scotland. Cooler though towards the northwest of Scotland. As we head into Tuesday, after a chilly start, lots of sunshines in store, almost wall-to-wall sunshine, in fact, across the bulk of the UK. Once again, feeling pleasantly warm in the sunshine, out of the breeze, certainly, with temperatures into the mid, locally upper teens in Celsius. And we hold on to a good deal of sunshine across the UK during the rest of the week, and those temperatures still doing quite well too, but with some chilly nights, even a touch of frost in places still.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could spruce up your spring, as we have an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash to be won. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also give you the latest Mulberry handbag, and not one, but two sought-after designer watches. Make sure you don't miss out, as lines close on the 4th of April. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to GB News.